In this video, we will talk about nested if statement. What are the nested if statements? That means if one if statement that is nested inside another if statement. So that means sometimes we have two logic conditions. They are connected to each other. We need to check one if statement first. If this one is true, then we can continue to do more process. So the nested if statement can be used to test more than one condition. So that means each condition actually they have the connection with each other. I need to have the first condition is true, then I can proceed another condition. So this one actually we can see from the lab exercise 4. Remember in the lab exercise 4, we tried to using two different if statements to check the slope and the distance value. So then we need to create a S result and a D result variable to store the information. Then at the end, we can print out the travel information. You see, for example, for the slope, we need to have one slope if condition to check if the slope greater or equal to 0. We know that's uphill. Else, that will be the downhill. So then the same thing, we have another if statement, if else statement. If the distance greater or equal to 30, so that will be the long distance. Otherwise, there will be short distance. So in order to display the output, we need to store the information into the D result. Then at the end, we see out this trip is either downhill or uphill, and they are long distance or short distance. So you can see here we're using two different if else statements, but we need to store the information first in the two variables. This is a good example we can using a nested if else statement. On the other hand, you see here, the result of the trip is either downhill or uphill, right? And the long distance and the short distance. So if we want to print the result inside our if else statement, we need to use the nested if statement. So we can rewrite these two if else code block into one nested if else code block. So then we can remove the S result or D result variables. Then we can print out the information. You see, for example, if this trip is uphill and long distance, that means your slope needs to be greater or equal to 0. So if the slope is greater or equal to 0, right? So we know they are uphill. So then we can see again, I need to check if the distance greater or equal to 30. So then we know this trip is downhill and long distance. Else, because when we get into this condition, that's we already know the if statement is true. So that means the slope is greater or equal to 0. So we know this trip is downhill. But because this condition, the distance is greater equal to 30. If that's true, that's long distance. Else, that will be short distance. So that's why we can display the output for the row condition. So the same thing, you see, this one actually we have come up the same similar inside if else code block inside if statement. But one thing is we will display the different output. So you see else, that means this condition, the first condition is false. That means slope is less than 0. So we know the trip is downhill. But we need to check also the distance condition. So if the distance greater or equal to 30, so then we display the trip is downhill and long distance. Else the trip is downhill and the short distance. So this one actually, if we want, you can run again for we can open our lab exercise 4. You see that's the original code. So we have the two separate if-else statement. So then we display the output at the end. So then when you run that, because we're using the random number generator, so that's why here when you display, so we will have a random number, so we can write we have the output. So then you can see here we have the output. So the same thing, what we do is, I just want you to modify this one, okay? So then we can change that become a, okay, so that's remove this one. So we comment out this one, so we can write a nested else statement. Earlier we showed you, right? So we have the nested if-else statement. So if the slope equal to 0, actually I need to continue to check if the distance greater equal to 30. Okay, so if that's slope greater than 0 and distance greater than 30, so that's why you see we will display this is a uphill. So that's an uphill and long distance travel. So you see we can write we have the result. So then we know else. So that means the distance not greater than equal to 30. So that's why here will be a short distance. So then you see here it's still uphill, but then you can display that's a short distance. So that's we call that's the nested if-else statement. So the same thing we see we can copy over again this one, because you can see this one we have the same condition, because after we know the slope is not greater equal to 0. So then we see else, we just continue. So then we still check if the distance greater than 30. So then here we can change they are downhill. And the long distance if they greater equal to 30. Else, this one is still downhill because the slope is less than 0. So that will be the downhill. So then that will be short distance travel. So then after you see they can replace what we have earlier. So then actually we just, without using the D result and S result variable to store the value, and we can see here we will have another result to display. That's a downhill and long distance travel. Of course, we have the random number generator, so that's why you can run the program more time. They just all have different results. So you can see they are all correct. It's an uphill and long distance travel. So this is one example. We say the nested if-else statement. So you have one condition, then you have another condition to check. So we can continue to see we have example 4. So this example 4, actually we have the situation is we try to process the loan application. So if a customer is employed, they have job, and they are recently graduated from college within 2 years. So this customer will qualify for a special interest rate for the loan. So that's why here I will show you the flow chart. So then if the customer is employed, so then you see that's the if statement. If that's true, then we will continue to check. Are they recently graduated or not? Then if that's true, so then we accept, give them special rate. Otherwise, we will reject that. If they are not employees, so we say false. Then recently graduated, that's reject. So that's this one. When we try to see the flow chart, you can see you have one condition, then follow the result for another condition. So that we will write the nested if statement. So here is the example 4. So then here we will have the cart variable co-employed and the recent grade. We ask the user, say, please answer the following question. So using the capital Y for yes or capital N for no. So are you employed? So then we see we get the user result, user input. So have you graduated from college in the past 2 years? So we get the user input. So then we can compare the result for the employee. So then if they are equal to the Y capital, so then that's true. So only they are employed, then we continue. So then if they recently grade, it's true. So then we just say you qualify the special rate. I want you to make sure you always download and run your program from your IDE to check. So then you can see here the sample output will have. So then we ask the user, are you recently graduated from college? Are you employed? Yes. So then are you recently graduated from college in the past 2 years? So if you say no, actually we didn't display anything. Otherwise, you see here again, only you are employed and recently graduated. We told you qualify for the special interest rate. And also this one, the same thing. You see, if the beginning you say, no, you are not employed, then actually they just skip. If the first if condition is false, so then you see they even skip the recent grade check. So then they just finish. So are you employed? No. You can see in this example, only you both enter yes. So then we will have the result say you qualify for special interest rate. However, sometimes user will feel weird. I enter yes and no, then you give me nothing. Okay, so that's why here I want you to continue to think about how will you update the example 4. So here we only when the both conditions are true, we give them something. But sometimes user also want to know why I didn't qualify, right? So I want you to think about how to modify example 4 to display the message to tell the user why they are not qualified. So on the other hand, then you will see here your flow chart will be a little different. Earlier, we only have employed is true. Recent grade is true. So then we displayed you qualify for the interest rate. But now you see if you are not employed, so at least you need to tell the user why you are not qualified. So we can display you must be employed to qualify. So then the same thing, if the recent grade user enter no, you need to tell them why they are not qualified. You can say you must have graduated from college in the past 2 years to qualify. So then how we will modify the example 4 for this. So then you will see, right, actually this one, the first condition is the outer if-else statement. So we have the if true, we continue have the nested if. But if false, we should do something. So then in your else, you also need to display something. So then the same thing, the second condition is our inside if-else statement. Earlier, we only when this condition is true, we do something. So then the same thing here, all the false will be the else part. So then we need to add the else part. So then now we have the modification for the example 5. So example 5, the same thing, we still ask the user on the 2 questions first. So then here we do the addition, a little change is, earlier we say if you are employed, we do inner on the another if else statement, right? But also here, if they are not employed, the else we will give them some information. So we told them you must be employed to qualify. So then the same thing, if they are employed, we have the recent grade is true. Besides, if that's true, I display something. But also if false, I will do else, display something for the information to know, to let them know they are not